Hello everyone, I'm Benjamin Contreras, and welcome back to the final episode in our Ben Talks About Popular Anime Movie Trilogy that I did. And as you can see from the Blu-ray right here, I'm going to be talking about the critically praised Akira. Now, this film is, of course, like the other three, very popular amongst the anime community, and is considered by many people to be one of the greatest anime films of all time. Now, when I classified this film as as Acid Trip the movie, in the previous video I did, I sort of meant that because that was sort of my first impressions on when I first saw the movie. As a matter of fact, fun fact, when I first saw it, it was with my mom, who's of course behind the camera. And she can agree that the imagery in the film was really, really bizarre. But before I get into all the details of that, I want to quickly cover the story of the film. Now, the movie takes place in a dystopian world called Neo-Tokyo after a huge devastation that caused pretty much the world to be pretty messed up. Stuff like gang wars, terrorist attacks, and all that kind of stuff is commonplace in this world. And during one of these gang wars, near the beginning of the movie, we meet a majority of our main characters. Two particularly who are extremely important. One who is the leader of a biker gang. I believe it's called the. I don't remember exactly what the biker gang was called, but their leader is of course the main character you see right here, and his name in both English dubs are pronounced very differently, so I've decided to give him the nickname of Kaneda. Anyway, Kaneda is of course the leader of this biker gang, and one of the members is a boy named Tetsuo, who becomes pretty much the secondary main character in the film. And at the end of this biker chase, Tetsuo gets kidnapped by the Neo-Tokyo's government and gets experimented on. To see by the government, to see if they can find someone with the power of someone named, of course, Akira, as the title of the film is. Who is this being who caused this catastrophe that resulted in the creation of Neo-Tokyo and the way it is. So Tetsuo pretty much goes through pretty much every single acid trip that you see in the movie, and as a result of that starts developing psychic powers and pretty much becomes the main villain of the movie. Meanwhile, as for Kaneda and his gang, they sort of separate for a while during the middle of the film, as Kaneda rescues this. You could sort of say rescue, but he pretty much meets a girl that he develops some feelings for, and the girl ends up turns out to be part of this resistance force that's going against the government, because I assume it's because they don't want the government to have the kind of power that they're searching for. And Kaneda decides to join up because he just wants to know what happened to his friend. So all of this is pretty much leading up to the final climax of the movie, where Tetsuo is searching for the remnants of Akira just to find out what in the world what is going on. Meanwhile, pretty much destroying almost everything in his path. And Tetsuo and the girl, who's named Kai, by the way, and the remains of Kaneda's biker gang all go over to where Tetsuo's going for a final duel where the main characters duke it out, and also leads to probably the most infamous scene in the entire film, which I won't exactly spoil, but it's about as infamous as the motorcycle and red jacket that the film's covers constantly advertise. Now, one thing that I would like to mention is that there are a couple of things that, while I don't really describe them as flaws, I feel like it would be something that would make me enjoy the film a little bit more. And that's some things that feel like they should have a much bigger deal aren't really as developed as I feel like they could have been. And this is likely because this is actually based on a book series of the same name. And of course, when you're translating something from a book to a movie, lots of things need to be, of course, cut out. And one of the major things that's a little bit a smaller deal, in my opinion, is the types of I call them acid trips that Tetsuo goes through while he's being experimented on. Apparently, that was because of these drugs that are apparently very dangerous in Neo-Tokyo that the government is using on all their test subjects, which helps them develop the powers that they have. But I'm not quite sure if that was explained in the film, but if it was, then I didn't really catch it. So the viewer ends up being like, "Whoa, wait, what is going on here?" And a lot of the stuff that Tetsuo ends up seeing is really, really creepy. But another major thing are like a similar problem with Ghost in the Shell. While the characters that it wants to focus on are developed really, really well and are likable in their own way, there's one particular side character that I feel like should have had a much bigger deal in the film, but in fact wasn't. And that character is named Kaori. I believe that's what her name is. She is Tetsuo's, I guess you could say, implied girlfriend. And she seems like she would be a rather big deal in the story, since she's pretty much a part of Tetsuo's life, and it seemed like Tetsuo generally cared for her, at least near the beginning of the film, because when he runs away from the government for the first time, he meets up with Kaori and talks about how he just wants him and her to just run away from all their problems. Which makes it seem like this is gonna really go somewhere, but really it kind of doesn't, because they only really share 3 scenes together, and afterward we're expected at the end of the movie to treat her death like it's such a big deal, but she didn't really do a whole lot in this story. I guess I can kind of feel sorry for her because of the stuff that she and Tetsuo goes through in the middle of the film after he escapes and gets attacked by the rival biker gang of these guys, who actually do remember the name of. I believe they were called the Clowns. But that's only because of the situation, and not necessarily because I cared about her as a character. If I were to, say, rewrite this film just a little bit, I would have given her a bit more of an active role in the story. Maybe have her follow Kaneda as a means of like trying to find out what happened to Tetsuo, similar to what Kaneda's goal is, and maybe they both would end up joining the rebellion with Kai, and that way we could sort of see her kind of develop into more of a, I guess you could say, badass kind of character like Kai is sort of portrayed as, and that would let us grow to like the character because we see her, grow. And perhaps this type of thing could also give Kaori and Tetsuo's relationship a bit more substance. And another thing I would sort of change involves the character of Tetsuo, because after he gets experimented on and starts getting these hallucinations and starts developing his powers, he becomes much more of an unlikable character, which I sort of feel like he should have a bit more of a sympathetic kind of role concerning the way he was at the beginning of the story. Like, I would sort of like after he gets experimented on for the first time, and as he gets more of these hallucinations, he sort of develops a, I guess you could say, Jekyll and Hyde relationship. where there's one side who is this all-powerful person who wants to find out more about this Akira person and grow it more and more powerful. And then the other side is actually the Tetsuo we know him as at the beginning of the movie, who just wanted to run away with Kaori when he first escaped, because that scene doesn't really, like I said, doesn't really go anywhere. And maybe Kaneda and Kaori could be his sort of connection to reality, I guess you could say. And that could be the cause of the final scene in the movie, because Tetsuo would sort of want to resist this kind of power because he feels like it might injure the people that he's come to know and care about. I feel like that would make him a bit more of a sympathetic character and would make Kaori's death, along with sort of his implied demise, a bit more tragic because none of that would be under his control. I feel like that would sort of that would make him into a more sympathetic villain kind of character. But despite that little rant I sort of have in terms of both of them, the other characters are likable in their own way, with Kaneda himself probably being the most likable, because I feel like he's sort of served as a sort of older brother figure to Tetsuo, and also because he's the one that I think has the most sense of humor during scenes where things don't look their best, like when they get like when the rest of the gang gets caught by the police during the beginning of the film, or when he meets Kai for the first time, or when they're trying to get the Tetsuo and one of his other gang members' bikes catches on fire. You know, those sort of scenes where it shows that the film has a bit of a sense of humor, which is the type of thing that you really need in this sort of depressing, dystopian kind of environment in order for the whole world to not be necessarily stale. Not that really would change the film in terms of its scenery, because, as I said, Neo-Tokyo is a really, really messed up place, and the setting itself is actually really similar to Ghost in the Shell, I found, with the higher technological and more elegant sort of buildings being in the upper half of the city. Meanwhile, the dirty and underdeveloped areas where the most danger probably happens occurs in the lower city. I feel like they have similar kind of settings, but I feel like Akira does a better job at showing us how this world is compared to our own world, because it doesn't necessarily break the pace of the film. It's constantly hitting you in the face with, you know, crazy event after crazy event, like when the crazy guy who holds the grenade and ends up blowing up the inside of the police station at the beginning of the film, or the gigantic shootout that happens in the mall area after Tetsuo gets kidnapped for a second time, or the entire climax where Tetsuo is getting to the Olympic Stadium where the remnants of Akira is, and that entire crowd of Akira's worshippers are following him. All these scenes really go to show how, you know, messed up the world really is. And a couple of the other side characters are likable in their own way, similarly to Kaneda. For example, Kai, the other female protagonist who's part of the resistance force, she was a pretty cool character, even though we're sort of left asking certain questions about her, like how she began developing these psychic powers and how she relates to the other children who got experimented on by the government. I don't feel like those things were really explained as well as they could have been. The rest